It seems we're all sensing that a recession is very much on the way. Plus, the fact it's been closing on 3 years since Tesla introduced a new model vehicle. Is it time for the $25,000 or inexpensive Tesla model, or is it not? Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. First of all, happy almost New Year to everybody. It is hopefully going to be a good 2023, but I'm a little bit concerned about that, primarily because of macroeconomic concerns and a bunch of big ticket things that are going on. But anyway, hopefully all of us will come out the other side of 2023 in a way better condition, except for maybe the age. The gray hair is definitely starting to pick up here. So as has been a very poorly kept secret, Tesla has clearly been working on a less expensive vehicle. In fact, years and years ago, Elon Musk teased the fact that there was going to be a $25,000 car. Now, with inflation, I don't believe that's going to be $25,000 anymore, but let's just call it 30. So something along those lines, but very much a mass market vehicle, something that is substantially cheaper than the Model 3, which is currently the least expensive car that Tesla sells. So what would be the arguments to introduce a vehicle like this very, very soon? I'm not talking about building it and shipping it just yet, but actually announcing it, saying we are going to do this. It's going to happen on X time frame, and it'll cost approximately this much money. Well, first of all is a stock market uptick. They're definitely an announcement of a new product. You could see this with GM and Ford and many other companies. They announce products without actually shipping them, and their stock takes off and it gets a bump from that. So I think that's the least important reason for that. But for a lot of people who are short-term investors and so forth, they might actually find that to be a very good reason for that. I personally think it's a very poor reason to do it, but it is a reason that Tesla might want to announce it soon. Secondly, and much more importantly, is that there is a whole group of people that cannot afford a Tesla right now. It just is too much upfront. And I know, and I've done an episode right up here if you're interested, where I compared a $30,000 Mazda CX-5 to an approximately double the cost Tesla Model Y with full self-driving, which was around $60,000 at the time that we purchased it, and how over time, including resale, the Model Y is actually cheaper to own than the $30,000 vehicle. But the caveat to all of that is the monthly payments for the Model Y are fairly substantial, and we've got an addition to that right now that the federal government in the United States and many other governments around the world have raised interest rates pretty drastically. And if you're in the camp where you're trying to stretch for a vehicle, right, you're trying to get a vehicle that's outside your normal range, then that makes a really big difference, right? You could be talking about an extra $100 a month or something that you're paying due to the higher interest rates. And that could easily put a vehicle that maybe was $700 a month prior to that goes to $800 a month. And within your budget, you could maybe squeeze in $700 a month, but you can't possibly squeeze in $800 a month. So that really does, that interest rate effectively raises the prices of the vehicles. And you can see that Tesla has actually been working on counteracting that by reducing the price of a lot of their vehicles in China, in Europe, and in the United States. On top of this, of course, is that there is this tax break that's coming out in the United States next year. Supposedly it'll take effect on January 1st, but we don't know exactly what vehicles are affected by it. And that's going to be really annoying not to know that for a while. But anyway, a vehicle that costs around $30,000 will definitely fall within that camp, assuming that the battery manufacturer and things like that work with it. But anyway, if you look at a vehicle like that, it will definitely fall within that camp. Currently, right now, I believe the expectation is that the lowest end Model 3 will count for that, but not any of the higher end Model 3s. Whereas I believe that both the long range and performance Model Y actually will count for the rebate. But of course, that's a much more expensive vehicle. And obviously the Model S and Model X don't count for this rebate. So anyway, it would really, really help if Tesla had a vehicle where it didn't matter what version of this vehicle, even if you bought the base package or the higher package or the highest package. So maybe the highest package was like $40,000 instead, that would still come in under the threshold to meet, so they could then get the $7,500 tax credit. And that would actually be a really important thing, because effectively that lowers the price of the vehicle. That means that more people can afford this, and that ups the demand for the vehicles. And of course, as anyone who's taken basic economics understands, if you decrease the price of something linearly, the demand is exponentially greater. So as you decrease the price of the vehicle like this, the demand doesn't grow in a straight line. The demand actually goes like this, and it tails up really quickly. If you wanted to buy a car, the perfect car, the best car ever made, but it cost $1 million, there's not going to be that much demand because not that many people can afford a $1 million vehicle. On the other hand, if you just had a Wuling Mini, for example, that cost $5,000, the demand for that is pretty strong. Even though it's a pretty crappy car, it's a car that only costs $5,000, right? People spend more than that on their computers. So, if you could get a car for the same price as a computer, that's pretty compelling. So even if it's a pretty crappy car, have a lot of demand for that vehicle. So obviously you can see how as you drive the price down, even if the quality of the vehicle goes way down, the demand is going to go way up. So I'm not suggesting at all that a $30,000 Tesla Model A or something like that, I'm not suggesting that that car is going to be poor quality at all. It will be very safe because that's Tesla's #1 mission. They keep saying over and over again. And of course it will have it'll be zippy. It won't be real fast because I assume it'll only have a single motor. And by the way, I did a whole video on my design for this if you're interested in checking that out as well. So definitely take a look at that. But whatever the design is, it's not going to be as fast as a dual motor Model Y or something like that. Certainly not a performance one, but it's going to get you around and it'll be zippy and it'll have a decent amount of range. And so you'll have a vehicle that's a really good, solid vehicle for getting you around, for driving you around town. If you're a small family, for going on road trips, things like that. So I expect it to be kind of a shrunk down Model Y, Model 3 hybrid, probably some kind of a hatchback or something like that, but a pretty small version of that, but it will be enough to seat at least 4 people and have some reasonable amount of luggage room too. So in other words, we're talking about a vehicle that will be very, very compelling for people to purchase, and they will want to purchase that. So that brings us to the where will this vehicle be manufactured? And I think that we could be looking at a couple of possibilities here and a couple of different versions of this vehicle. So the #1 place that's obvious is manufacturing it in China. There's a very good chance that this vehicle will have been designed in China because, of course, Tesla was very much into that. I think in 2020, right around the time the pandemic hit, they were talking about the China Design Studio and how they wanted to design cars in China for the entire world. So there's a really good chance that it will have been designed in China or at least partially designed in China. And there will be at least one version of that will be designed for the China market because they need to compete with less expensive electric vehicles there. And in that case, the odds are that one of the expansions of the Shanghai factory will likely be the place that they will start manufacturing that. By the way, I believe that given the fact that this is a poorly hidden, thing that they've been doing for a long, long time, I have a feeling that there are a lot of these things that have been hand built and put together and cobbled together in secret, very, very utmost secrecy, and that they've been working on the design and really, really refining it over time, but that we just don't know about it because, of course, Tesla's keeping this pretty close to the vest until they announce the product. The other option, of course, and it could be a yes and situation, is that they might build this vehicle in Mexico. If you want to check out this video, I did a video recently about how there's rumors that Tesla's next, Western Hemisphere factory will be in Mexico. And that would make really, really good sense for an inexpensive vehicle because that's a place where the labor costs are relatively lower than the United States. And so you could make a reasonable profit on a reasonably inexpensive vehicle. So we could easily have a China designed vehicle for China and potentially for Europe as well, and then a Mexico designed vehicle, or not a Mexico designed vehicle, but a Mexico manufactured vehicle potentially from the Shanghai design, but maybe a little bit bigger for the North American market. So I'm sure you're saying, hey, Dr. Know-It-All, this sounds wonderful. Why not announce this product yesterday and have it on the books and have people get really excited and interested about it because we've got a recession, we've got high interest rates, we need something to be positive about with Tesla. Well, there's a couple of reasons why I don't think they've announced it yet. The first one is probably the most obvious one, which is the classic Osborne effect. That is related to a computer company in the early 1980s that announced the Osborne 2 a long time before it was available. I think it was like 9 months or a year or something like that. And they said, we've got the Osborne 2, it's coming out, it's going to be fantastic, so much better than the Osborne 1. The problem was that immediately dried up any interest in the Osborne 1. And before they could introduce the Osborne 2, they went out of business because they had not sold anything. So companies have learned from that not to advertise things too far into the future. Now, you could say like, okay, the semi-truck was announced in 2017, if I'm remembering right. The Cybertruck was announced just about 3 years ago in 2019. And so those vehicles, it's like, well, what's the problem with that? Well, in those cases, for the semi-truck, of course, you're talking about a commercial vehicle, so entirely different market. But with the Cybertruck, you're talking about a truck, right? You're talking about a very big, expensive vehicle. So people are going to be like, yeah, I want one of those, but I would also like to have a Model 3 or a Model Y or a Model S or a Model X or whatever, right? So it's not really eating into the current market. It's just an aspirational thing that people want. And I do want my Cybertruck eventually. It'll be nice if I can get that. That'll be awesome. But anyway, if you think about the difference between that and a vehicle that totally undercuts the cost of the other vehicles that Tesla sells, it's sort of similar to when the Model S and Model X were out and the Model 3 was announced. That probably did some damage to Model S in particular sales. And then, of course, Tesla had to go through the production hell of getting it all ramped up and all of that stuff, and it took too long. And so I think it's a once bit, twice shy kind of situation where Tesla's like, we understand the Osborne effect and how it could decrease sales. And at the same time, we don't want to get in a situation where it's going to take us 3 years to ramp up this Model 2 vehicle, whatever it's called. We don't want to be in a situation like that because people will hold off for 3 years, especially in a recession. They'll say like, well, I'm just going to hold on to my money and I'll invest in some Tesla stock or something like that. I'll do other things with my money for a few years until I can get this vehicle. And that would be fairly disastrous. Again, I don't think it's going to cut into S and X sales because those are, a whole different ballpark. And maybe not even Model Y sales, but it certainly will cut into Model 3 sales. So I think Tesla is very, very cognizant of that. And they probably don't want to announce this vehicle too much before, like maybe 12 months before they think they can get it on the roads. And then the second reason not to announce it right away, I believe, has a lot to do with Elon Musk. He really, really wants to announce this vehicle as kind of a robo-taxi only vehicle. I believe they probably have designs. They probably have other designs too, alternate ones, but they have at least a few designs. I guarantee you that do not have pedals or steering wheels or anything like that. And Elon Musk really, really, I think, wants this to be the car that is a robo-taxi. And they don't even necessarily want to sell it to the consumer because, again, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, the best thing you could do would be to utilize a vehicle 5 times more than you use it as a consumer. So again, as a consumer, my car's sitting in the garage right now. I take it someplace, I park it, work, whatever, the gym, the grocery store, something like that. It just sits most of the time. It's not driving most of the time. So if you could get a vehicle and you could drive it most of the time, say 5x the amount that a consumer vehicle is driven, then that can take 5 vehicles off the road. And that means that you're making a much, much bigger impact. And then of course, on top of that, Tesla would be able to make recurring revenue if they did that, right? So you could either sell the car to a consumer on a kind of subscription basis, or probably more likely is you start a fleet of robo-taxis and have them on demand and you collect the profits from that. So I believe that that's what Elon Musk, at the very least, if not Tesla themselves, really, really wants to happen. And that's probably a major reason why they haven't introduced it yet. So while there are a lot of factors that lean towards saying like Tesla should introduce the next model vehicle, the $30,000 car, as soon as possible, there are some major factors that are, balancing the other direction. And I think that's why they haven't announced this yet. I think a really big reason was the announcement of the Model 3, and they had so much trouble ramping it, and probably did see sales of the Model S go down as they were trying to ramp this because people were like, cool, that's all I need. It's cheaper. I'll buy that one instead. So I think they really don't want that to happen. And I also think Tesla really, really wants, at least Elon Musk really, really wants robo-taxis, not consumer sellable vehicles. So what do I think will happen and when? I think there's a really good chance that if and when they announce the factory in Mexico, assuming that that's the next place they put it in the Western Hemisphere, they will probably also align that at least within a few months of that factory being announced. And after ground is broken and they've started working on it, that they'll announce that either something that was designed by Franz here in the United States or something that was designed by him in collaboration with the Tesla design factory in Shanghai will be announced as the next, less expensive model, but that they will try to ramp up and they will try to sell this car within about 12 months after they announce it, rather than this very extensive time that they usually have. They won't want to announce it and then wait 3.5 years like they're doing with the Cybertruck. And for those who are worried about the recession affecting Tesla and how how they should announce this vehicle sooner to counteract some recession fears. Well, the recession is probably going to last 12 to 18 months-ish. And there's no way that they're going to get this next model, Model 2, online within 18 months, at least not in any kind of significant numbers. So there's no reason for them to announce it now because of the recession, because of the economic impact. It would have been great for Tesla if the recession had waited one more year. Then they probably would have been in a better situation to have been able to announce it and bring it out relatively quickly. But I don't think they can bring it out fast enough for it to really impact the fact of the recession and the impact on sales for Tesla because of that. As for which version of the Tesla vehicle, the one with the steering wheel or the one without, I expect, I'm going to just hazard a guess here. I'm going to hazard a guess that the one in China, the one that's being done in Shanghai, again, this is assuming that there's two of these, but assuming that there's two, that the one in Shanghai will be manufactured with a steering wheel and the one in Mexico without. Number one, because they'll be able to get the Shanghai one online much faster because that facility exists. They're able to build very rapidly in China. So there's a lot of tailwinds behind them to build the vehicle faster. And if they can get it on the road in 18 to 24 months, so we're looking at the end of 2024, middle to end of 2024, that would be a good timeline for Shanghai. And then it might take another year for the factory in Mexico to make that happen. And while they're building the factory, they can see if full self-driving is getting good enough and getting regulatory approval. And if it does, then that factory will manufacture a similar vehicle, but without the steering wheel or pedals. So the ones out of Shanghai will probably be exported around the world in that case, and those will be ones that we can purchase. The ones that might come out of a factory, hypothetically, in Mexico would be the ones that didn't have steering wheels or pedals, and those would go into Tesla's robotaxi fleet, and they would, lease those things out either to other companies, or they would just collect the profits themselves and run it themselves like Uber or something like that. So in short, while there's a lot of reasons for Tesla to announce a new vehicle, especially a less expensive one right now, the reasons not to clearly outweigh that at this point. And so that's why I'm pretty firmly convinced that they won't announce this vehicle until maybe mid 2023. Something like that would be the earliest that I would expect it. So if they have a big announcement event next July or something, then you should probably be paying attention because that might be the release announcement for this new vehicle. All right, I hope you enjoyed this speculative episode and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. And it will be interesting to check back on this video in a year and see how wrong I was. So anyway, we'll see about that when that happens. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy the video, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly do appreciate it. You all are wonderful. I've appreciated spending the holiday season with you virtually and hope to meet a lot of you in person over the next coming year. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.